Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chia and Happy New Year. I am filming this on the 3rd of January and I can't believe we're into 2026 already. In 2025 I blinked and we were at the end of the year already. I don't know what happened in the last year to make it go by so fast. Here we are. I am so happy that 2025 was done. 2025 was great the first half and then just started slowly going downhill. I'm so happy we're in 2026 and I'm hoping you guys are having a good year so far. But in this video I would like to do my December wrap up. So of course, first things first is stats. I love stats. I'm a nerd. I like to see what kind of like numbers I sort of achieve in the month. Reading is never a numbers game, by the way. Read to your own enjoyment. Do not ever compete with anybody else for reading. You pick up a book and you read it, and if you read one book this year, that's amazing. You are a reader and that's what counts, and you are doing better than majority of the population who don't even pick up one book a year. So you're doing a great job. But let's get started with my stats. So I did end up reading 7 books. I wish I was able to read more, but obviously it's the holidays. I was trying to spend time with friends and family, so of course it gets busy and all that. And then I was going through a lot of like personal stuff in the last couple months too. So like I said, I'm so happy that we're in 2026. I read 7 books in the month of December. I read 2 contemporary romances, and then also I read 2 young adult fantasies, one of them being like a gothic fantasy and the other one is like a young adult fantasy. You'll see when I talk about it. And then 2 fantasy romances and then 1 sci-fi. My average pace was 6 days to finish, and then also my format was majority physical because I love reading physical books, but I did read like a couple of them on my Kindle, and my average rating was a 4-star. Nothing too huge, nothing too bad, so I felt like December was an okay month, average month. I did read a couple of like new releases that I was so happy about. The first book I read in the month of December was Brimstone by Callie Hart. This is the sequel to Quicksilver. This is the Fey and Alchemy series. I haven't seen Callie Hart confirm anywhere, at least to my knowledge, whether it's going to be a 4 or 5 book series, because we are getting the 3rd one in exactly a year. I think it's coming in November of this year actually, but I know that it's not going to be a trilogy. I think it's going to be 4th book, because I feel like with the revelation that happened in the 2nd book, we need a lot more than just the 3rd book to continue, because I need more explanations, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So this follows a character named Saris. She is a part of the slums in this country where they are ruled by a Fey queen. She is like in the lowest of the lowest. None of the wealthy have trickled down to the poor at all, and so she lives in like the most dangerous place because of the fact that they are part of the slums, and also they have to like ration water. She ends up stealing sort of like a gauntlet from one of the queen's officers, and she ends up getting thrown into the dungeon to be dealt with by the queen. And during this point she ends up inadvertently opening this portal which Kingfisher comes out of. It's like a dramatic movie moment when Kingfisher comes out of this portal, and so in order to save Ceres, because she has significant injuries, he ends up taking her back to the Fey world, and she ends up finding out she is one of the last known alchemists of this world. She ends up having to help out Kingfisher and his family and friends in order to help this world be saved, because they are also in the middle of a war. This is the 2nd book after the huge cliffhanger that happened in the last book and the changes that our characters are having to go through. I love that we get a new perspective in here from Kingfisher, because in the last one we didn't really know any of his thoughts, but in here their romance is actually really developed. And I know a lot of people found that there was a lot of problems in this book because there was some editing and some like grammatical stuff in here too, but I found that it's like freaking quiet when I'm not filming. The moment I turn on the camera and start filming, literally everyone and their mom starts going outside and start doing whatever they're doing out there. But anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I love the character developments in this book, and I know that a lot of people kind of had a problem with this because there's some editing errors in here, some like grammatical stuff that are happening here too, but I found that it didn't take away from my enjoyment of the book whatsoever. I did find that the pacing did drag a little bit within the first like maybe 25% of the book, because it was trying to remind us of what happened in the last book and how they are dealing with it now since we saw them last, because we haven't really seen these characters for over a year now. This book was supposed to come out in October of last year, but since Callie Hart became traditionally published because of how popular Quicksilver got, Brimstone ended up getting pushed back a year because of course they had to republish everything. I absolutely loved my time with this. I think the world was like fleshed out more. I love that we opened parts of the world more out. The world was more open to us, that we've kind of visited and like explored more of different parts of the world that was mentioned in the last book. And also Ceres had such a great character development in here. I found that she was like in the first book kind of being rescued by Kingfisher a lot. I just didn't find that really particularly exciting from a character development standpoint. I loved her so much in this. She goes through some changes that are happening from the last book, and she is like really owning her own like abilities and powers and finding different parts of her that she didn't really fully existed, and she found that she could stand on her own because of the fact that she went through so much stuff and still was able to come out on the other side changed and stronger than how she was before. So I absolutely fell in love with her in this story. I like the fact that also Carrion got like a great character development too, and because Kingfisher got his own point of view, we got more adventures from his point of view and his interactions with different people. I absolutely love it. And I know that a lot of people do not like Kingfisher because of how he spoke in the first one and how he was very sort of like mean to our female main character, but the way he was so sweet in this one, you see the feelings he has for all the people that he loves. He loves his family, he loves like his people, and would take like a bullet for them just to make sure that they are safe and happy. But we find that some of our characters have been keeping secrets from not only the people in the book but from the reader as well. So that last line, I don't even know what's going to happen at this point because of how different it's going to be with this last line, and I'm just like sitting here wondering how it's going to change. So we shall see in the next book, and thankfully we don't have to wait years and years for the third one to come out. With all these like cliffhangers that Callie Hart is giving us, I want like the ending and the conclusion to the story even more now because I'm so interested to see where she's gonna put these characters next. The only reason why I couldn't give it a full 5 stars is because there was something that happened towards the end where I don't particularly like this trope whatsoever. It's like, I feel like this trope is such a cop-out, but that's the only reason why I couldn't give it a 5 stars. So I gave it a 4.5 though, which is still an amazing rating for this. And also I just didn't get the same feeling that I had when I first read Quicksilver, because the moment I like got halfway through Quicksilver, I knew it was going to be a 5 stars and a favorite. This one was a 4.5 stars, but I still absolutely enjoy it nonetheless. And it is a little bit more spicier than the last one. If you are deterred from like spice, I would say that be aware of that, but at the same time it didn't really take away from my experience, and I am a particular person who doesn't like too much spice in my books because I like more plot and character development over spice. I absolutely love this and I highly recommend picking up the second one, and I think it was an amazing sequel. And the next book I picked up was Dawn of Chaos and Fury. This is by Melissa K. Warwick, and this is the 4th and last book in the Legacy series. I have been reading this for the past couple of years. She first came out with the first book in 2024. I want to say 2023. I fell in love the moment I read Reign of Shadows and Endings. I fell in love with the characters because I read Lady of Darkness first. I read the whole entire series beforehand, and I felt like that was great to do because of the fact that it gave me a good foundation to the world. It's not necessary to read Lady of Darkness. The only reason why I would recommend to do it is if you really want to connect to characters. Because the Legacy series is within the same world of Lady of Darkness, there are kind of like crossovers. This book does a good job of explaining the world, and also there's like different things that they have to deal with and different conflicts in this book compared to how Lady of Darkness conflicts were. This follows a character named Tessa. She is a fae. She lives in the world where legacies are sort of like the higher tiered species in this world, and the faes are like the bottom of the bottom. They're made to be the slaves of these legacies, and so every 5 years or so, every 4 years, something like that, they end up doing a selection year where these legacy lords from each different part of the world, there's like 7 lords that come to selection year, and every single year they go through all the faes who've been like kind of assigned to different kingdoms, and they choose the sources for these legacies. So legacies need sources in order to replenish their power, and these faes don't have any choices. Once they're selected, they're selected. They can't leave unless like the legacy lets them leave, and they are kind of cruel in different kingdoms. And Tessa never ever wanted to be a source. She wanted to go off on her own and just go get assigned to a kingdom and be left alone, because she's always been alone as a kid, and she's been abandoned by her family, and she's always been an orphan. Despite her plan, she gets chosen by the Aries heir, Theon, and she gets taken away to the Aries kingdom. And Aries kingdom is known to be like the most cruel, the most dark, so she fights tooth and nail against the source spawn left and right. And she is so reckless and such an unreliable character, but that's what I loved about her, because I understood where she was coming from. I understood her past traumas and how because of those past traumas she's had to act out in certain ways. And of course, if she's being taken to something that she doesn't really want to do and it's going to take over her whole entire wills and agency, of course she would like fight left and right too. And this book has become one of my favorites. There's so many morally great characters in here. There's literally no one person that I feel feel is like completely good or completely bad. I feel like they all have their reasonings about certain choices that they make. I loved the first 3 books. And then we came to this one. I was into this book the first 50% because I was so excited to see what was going to happen to our characters. I wanted to see how they're going to end up because of the fact that third book left them in such a bad situation, and now we have like a new POV in this one too that I never thought we would get. I loved it until after the 50% mark because of a certain trope and a certain choice that was made. It was like kind of hinted at the first few, but I felt like it wasn't going to be that because I saw that there was a redemption being done for one of the male main characters. So I was kind of badly assuming that this was the whole entire choice that was going to be made. I didn't like it. It's not what I really like. I didn't like how the story wrapped up. I just felt like our character Tessa, who I know a lot of people don't like because of how infuriating she is, but I was always the biggest Tessa defender because she has gone through so much trauma, so it's understandable that she acts like that, and I love her for it, for keep on fighting, keep on being strong-willed despite the stuff that's happening. But in this book, I felt like her character development just like went down the hill, to be completely honest. And then the villains that we were going against, like the last few books, I just felt like they had an easy end or an easy solution, at least in my opinion. So I was really disappointed in this because literally Legacy series is one of my favorite series of all time. And to have a favorite series that you've been like fighting for people to read for the past year to have such a, I guess, like disappointing conclusion, at least to me, I just felt so sad, and I've been on the fence about going back and forth of what rating I should honestly give this. So because of how I felt about it, I would probably be the kind of like minority in this point because I went on Goodreads and there's so many people who are raving about how this ended. I didn't like it. I didn't like how it ended. I didn't like how a lot of characters kind of regressed to how they were before. I don't feel the same way I felt about certain characters compared to like the last book, and I'm so sad that I had to say this. And also it was like almost 700 pages and it just didn't feel like it needed to be 700 pages. I felt like a lot of things kind of dragged out, and for it to be dragged out like that and then just have a quick sort of like a solution to the whole entire huge conflict, I just didn't understand. And also there's so many things that was like the ick to me. Baby girl is literally one of the worst like nicknames I've ever read in a book, and I've read a lot of terrible nicknames, and the baby girl was used every single page whenever this certain character went on the page. So unfortunately this was going to be a 3.75. I have not rated anything lower than 5 stars for any of the parts of the series. I wish it was a different story. The only reason why I didn't rate it lower than like 3.75 is because of like Axel's POV in here. He was my number one favorite character in this book. He had such amazing character development, and there's one scene where he has to go and do a certain thing to rescue a certain person. It was so good. It was so good. I loved his character development. He is the star of this book. So I still recommend this whole entire series, especially if you're looking for like a dark fantasy with a very, very fleshed out world. I absolutely love the world. I think the magic behind it and also the history of the legacy and the fae in this world is so amazing. But for me personally, I just thought this was very, very disappointing. So unfortunately, I did have to give it a 3.75. And the next book I picked up, I wanted something a little bit more lighter than like the in-depth world of like the Legacy series and the darkness behind it. So I decided to pick up Belladonna, and this book is by Adeline Grace. This is a YA fantasy. This follows a character named Signa, and all throughout her life, she has been followed by death. Every single time she's been put off to a different family member, they end up unfortunately passing away, and death has always caused this. And she's always hated him because of the fact that every single person that she's ever lived with died. And yeah, they were kind of like only after her for her money once she grew up and everything, because once she hits a certain age, I think it's like 20, she has access to her full wealth and she gets to inherit everything that her family gave her. But because of the fact that she's been pushed around to different families, the last family she has is her uncle and then her 2 cousins. Unfortunately, recently they did lose their mom, and then there's ghosts like haunting this whole entire like manor that she's living in. There's sort of like a murder mystery going on too, while she's also interacting with death. She's realizing her connection with death is more than meets the eye. I love this book so much. It was such a surprise. I fell for death so much. Whenever he came on the page, I swooned. I never thought I would say that. That's crazy because I never thought I'd say I would fall for death, but I did. I loved Signa. I thought she had an amazing character development. She was such a strong character. I find that a lot of like YA FMCs really kind of annoy me a bit because of how naive and like young they are. Of course, because it's a YA and they're very inexperienced. They're usually like mid-teens or like 18 or 19, early 20s. They're usually really young, so of course it's understandable that they're all naive and they don't understand the world. But Signa, because of all the deaths she's seen and the sadness that she's unfortunately had to deal with, she's very mature for kind of like her age, and I loved her interactions with death. It's literally one of my favorite things, and also I love the atmosphere of it too. It was a very dark, gothic, like mystery manner. There's like ghosts running around. She feels it because she's always seen death, so of course like she's been able to interact with like different creatures of death and also the ghost. There's also like a part where there's like a secret garden thing too, so it reminded me of Secret Garden. I loved it. I didn't expect to love it because I did hear a lot of like mixed things about like the Belladonna series. I loved it regardless. The atmosphere, the amazing characters. Death is like the #1 reason you should read this book because he's so swoon worthy in this book. I loved it. The romance was amazing. Highly recommend, and it was a 4.5 stars. So I started picking up some like Christmas romances since it is like 'tis the season, you know. So I picked up Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh. And so this follows two characters where they meet each other on like the plane and they realize their connections with each other because the male main character is dating her roommate and there was like an awkward flight that they had to go through, and then the second year they ended up finding each other again, and after like a couple years they ended up becoming friends because after the accidents of like finding each other on the same flight, they decide to start intentionally booking flights with each other because they flew to the same town every single year. They're both from Ireland, and so they figured that they should fly on the same flight every single year. And the male main character, he loves Christmas. His whole entire family loves Christmas. He wears like ugly Christmas sweaters on the plane whenever they meet, but she is from a family where it's very small and they don't really celebrate Christmas. They don't like put any decorations up. They don't like really, they do exchange presents, but they don't like full on get festive with everything. One year when they're trying to get home to Dublin, there's like a snowstorm that happens, so she ends up trying to find ways to get him home for Christmas. She doesn't want him being sad of not being able to see his family because he and his family are super close. And throughout this whole entire journey to get to Dublin, they end up trying to figure out if they have feelings for each other. It's so sweet. I absolutely love the whole entire friends to lovers like trope. It's one of my favorites, and I loved how they naturally started like falling for each other when they were slowly starting to be friends. I loved their true friends first and foremost. They tease each other. They know what to say to each other to make each other feel better. I loved it. I loved it so much. It reminded me of people we meet on vacation, and I think this is one of my favorite Christmas romances. I found that the last Christmas romances I read were just like so cookie cutter and basic, and I just didn't connect to any of the characters. I love the love story between Molly and Andrew. I thought it was so sweet. So I absolutely love this, and I highly recommend. It was one of the better Christmas romances I read, and I gave it a 4 stars. The next book I read was Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. I read this years ago when it first came out, and I heard that like the 10th anniversary collection was coming out, so of course I had to pick it up. And also it's Hoa 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 season, so of course I had to pick up Twilight. I don't know if I should have to explain what Twilight is because everyone should know at this point because of how big of a phenomenon it was, but just in case you don't know, we follow a character named Bella. She ends up moving to this town in Washington called Forks, and she ends up running into some family that is very like different looking and doesn't really interact with other humans in this world, so she ends up falling for one of the sons named Edward. It's very early 2010s like kind of stories. It's very cringe, and it focuses mainly on their love story and how she falls in love with a vampire basically, and also there's werewolves in here too because of like a character named Jacob. He is a part of a werewolf clan and they have like a reservation to stay at. Either I blocked this out of my mind or I didn't really fully know what was going on when I first read it. I didn't realize how much Edward like used to gaslight her. Every single time like she would notice something strange about him and his family, he would gaslight her so much, which makes sense because he's trying to protect his family. But if he was truly, you know, trying to protect his family, he interacted with her a lot. Of course, the romance takes a sub-majority of the book. Bella was so annoying. I didn't like the fact that she was so dumb. I'm gonna say it dumb. Both the movie and the books are so cringy, but it brings me so much nostalgia. I ended up giving it a 3 stars because that's how I honestly felt about it, but I will continue on with the series because I do want to reread it and see how I feel about the series overall. The second to last book I read in December was The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. I keep forgetting the name of this. We follow a character named Maggie. She is unfortunately going through a sort of divorce right now because the person she was with for years ended up like kind of cheating on her, and it's it's Christmas time, of course, and she gets invited by one of her most favorite authors to go visit and attend this event in England at her manor. She doesn't understand why they're being invited. Like, she gets sent out on a private plane, and on there is somebody named Ethan, and Ethan is like her writing rival or something, or they just had bad interactions with each other, and they work for the same publishing company, and they're both writers. There is certain points where like she explains why they like don't like each other, at least where she doesn't like him. When she tries to argue with him, he tries to be friendly with her because he's like the personable people person and she's not. She basically tells him that the reason why they don't talk to each other or why she's being so hostile to him is because like they don't like each other or they hate each other, but he doesn't seem to hate her. When they get to England, the writer that they love is like a great murder mystery thriller writer, and she ends up disappearing in her own manor. They are surrounded by people who are in charge of like different estate parts of hers or related to her. They're selfish with her time and they don't really seem to care about Eleanor. So we go through this like sort of knives out murder mystery thing where they have to go around and find out where she is. The only two people who seem to really care about her well-being is Ethan and Maggie, and they're the ones who have to go solve it. And during the point where they're like trying to find out what happened to Eleanor, they end up falling for each other and slowly start talking to each other about what they felt about each other. There's a lot of like things being forced on us to believe, and we're like being told rather than shown certain things. And also I just found Maggie kind of insufferable. I didn't believe the love story between her and Andrew. I get it, the author is trying to focus mainly on like the love story and having it be like a Christmassy kind of crime kind of story. I didn't personally enjoy it. I thought the atmosphere was great and the story had potential, but I didn't really enjoy it. Again, it's one of those like regular contemporary romances that I just don't feel connection to because everything felt really rushed. I felt like their relationship was rushed too because literally the events that happened where they fell for each other and trying to find Eleanor took like 2 days. And also Maggie, I just felt like she didn't really have good character development either. So no, I didn't really like this book and I don't really recommend it, especially since like I was really looking forward to the murder mystery aspect of it, and I gave it a 3 stars. So I'm glad that I finally read it, and that was my last Christmas romance of December, and I'm glad I at least got one good like Christmas romance book. There were some other Christmas romances where I tried to read it, but by that point I was already over it, so I think I'm just gonna push it to next year to read, or this year actually. And then the second to last book that I picked up, I will have an in-depth vlog on this book in my continuing series vlog, so it might be posted after I post this one. But of course I read Morningstar by Pierce Brown. This is the 3rd book in the Red Rising saga. There are currently 6 books out. They're gonna be a total of 7 books, and I think the last book is supposed to be coming out this year. That's what Pierce Brown has said, that he is currently writing it, and I think he's done with it. Now it's going through like all the final edits and publishing like aspects of it, and we should be getting it by summer 2026. If not summer, then most likely fall. I'm so sad to see the story end, even though I'm only done with the 3rd book. This was such a wild book. We follow a character named Daryl. He is a part of society where everyone is divided into different colored tiers, and he is a part of the lowest tier, which is red, and he is a helldiver. As a helldiver, he is meant to basically find helium, but he ends up finding out that Mars has been livable this whole entire time, and they've just been leaving it for the golds to live on. And so he ends up joining a rebellion afterwards because of a tragedy that happens in the beginning of the book, and he ends up getting remade into a gold. Golds are like tall, 8 feet, and so he has to go under sort of like a cyberpunk treatment of like changing his whole entire body to be taller and also more muscle so that he can blend in with the golds. The organization he is being recruited by sends him to the golds to attend this like academy setting where he has to basically fight against other golds and prove to see which ones are the strongest. And it's sort of like a Lord of the Flies situation where they have to basically survival of the fittest, and so he ends up rising and like ends up forming these friendships, and like they're not necessarily all that bad. They're not all the same people who are trying to suppress other colors. They're actually really good people. So he ends up becoming friends with them, and it just ends up becoming more right afterwards. And also when like people first read the series, a lot of people don't like Red Rising at first. I personally enjoyed Red Rising. I love the whole entire aspect of them being a part of an academy where they have to basically fight for their lives and the strongest come out at top. and the ending of it was crazy, and so we continue on with second and third book. This one, we are straight into a war. If you watched like I think I read it in October, November, if you watched my last continuing series vlog or my wrap up of that month, I was so flabbergasted at the ending of Golden Sun. I haven't been that shocked in an ending in ever, in all honesty, because of the things that happened, especially when like the last 100 pages. The 50 pages before that last 50 pages, everything was great. Everything was going well. And when you are at the last 100 pages of a fantasy and everything's going well, you know everything's going to hell. The last 50 pages, and it did. That ending was like one of the most shocking I've read in a while, and so I had to go straight into Morning Star, and we just like literally start off from where our characters are. Darrow in such a dangerous situation, and there's this whole entire war that we have to like fight in, obviously, because he's still trying to fight for the Reds. But it's literally getting to the point where he's not only fighting for the Reds anymore, it's also all the low tier colors and also the Golds as well, who want to help fight with him in this war. There's so much of the stuff that happens. Our different characters sort of like kind of get scattered into their own situations at the end of the Golden Sun book. I felt like the character development in this book was amazing. Severo is my number one besides Darrow for favorite character. I love Mustang. All the characters in here are amazing. Pierce Brown has a way of introducing a character for the first like, I don't know, 5 chapters, making you fall in love with this character, and then doing something so devastating that you're just like sitting there thinking, what the heck was Pierce Brown thinking? And so at the end of this book, I thought Golden Sun was a crazy ending. This was a crazy ending. We end up going through so many emotions the last 100 pages, just when you think that things are getting just worse, and then you are screaming at the page telling the characters not to do a certain thing because something bad's gonna happen after you make that choice, and then of course something bad happens after you make that choice, and now you're screaming because you're like sitting there wondering what the heck is going on, and then he fakes you out because of certain things. There's so much things that happen in this book, and I thought Golden Sun was my favorite. Morning Star is my favorite now. This was the original ending to the original trilogy before he decided that he wanted to continue on with the series, and that last 50 pages was criminal. There was a certain point at the end where something happened. I almost threw the book, and I could not go on for the life of me. I had to put the book down and step away from it for like a few minutes because I couldn't continue. I didn't want to turn the page because I don't want that reality to be real. It was crazy. Just to let you know, there was like so many emotions I had in the last like, no, not even the last 50 pages. So many emotions in this whole entire series. I am so flabbergasted at what we're gonna do next because I thought the ending of this book was perfect. Like obviously there's still like a lot of stuff they had to fix and like reparations they had to do because of like the state of their society. It makes sense that he has a new arc because of the different things and the choices that people made in this book. But my goodness, I wish we could just leave them in this happy bubble. But obviously we're not gonna see them in a happy bubble. I'm scared to go on, but I want to go on because I miss these characters so much, and I'm glad I don't have to really say goodbye to them right now. But still, it's becoming a god tier series, and I can't believe it took me so long to pick this book up. Of course it was a 5 stars. This was my favorite read of December. The only 5 stars I gave out. Red Rising, it's such a gut-wrenching series, but it's such an amazing found family. I love the characters in here. I love the fact that there's not one person who is completely good or completely bad. Everyone has reasonings for everything. They are just protecting people that they love or protecting what they've known since they were a kid. They are stemming from a lot of trauma and a lot of like things that they wish they never went through, but because of the fact that they are fighting for a different future, they never ever want to have like people in the future having to face what they were facing. Sometimes some of the choices that some of these characters make are just like flabbergasting, because then there's situations where their consequences come right after, and then I kept thinking like, if you just thought about this choice rather than like jumping on here right away, it would have turned out differently. But then you can't really blame them because they're running off of emotions, because then in all honesty, if you were in the same precarious situation, you probably would have acted the same way too. I love this series so much. I give it a 5 stars. I love it. I highly recommend picking up the Red Rising series. It's so good. I can't wait to jump into the next arc of the series, and I'm happy that I'm reading all of it this year because I couldn't even imagine having to read the last book and wait on a cliffhanger, because I heard the cliffhanger in Lightbringer is insane and I don't want to read that until closer to the release of Red God. I don't think I'm going to pick up the next arc until Pierce Brown announces the last like book release date, so that way I can finish it and then just look forward to the date. Yes, I love this book. Again, highly recommend, and I'll scream from the rooftops to let people people know to read this book, especially if you're like in a fantasy mood, but all the romanticities and everything else has not been hitting lately. I highly recommend picking this up. So that was my last book that I read in December. I had a pretty good reading month despite like some average reads. There was nothing horrible about like the books that I read this month, so I'm very happy with it. It was a great way to end the year by reading one of my favorite books of all time. That was such a great ending to it, and I can't wait to read more in 2026. I want to see what other genres I pick up this year. I have picked up a few literary fictions that I want to pick up soon that is a part of my winter TBR. I really hope that we all have a good reading year in 2026, and I want to thank you all for the support that you've given me in 2025. I hope we all have like an amazing year, and if you want more videos like this, like and subscribe. It really does help my channel a lot, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!